All right, we are back with another episode of Abstracts, and this effect is something that I'm honestly surprised I've never done a tutorial on this before. It's an effect I've used for years now. It's a favorite. It's a staple. You can use it in so many different places. It's a super versatile effect, and I figured, we've kind of tiptoed around this effect for quite some time. We did this geography terrain effect in one of the older Abstracts videos where it was inspired by the movie Oblivion. So this time I figured, let's go ahead and we'll jump into here, and I'll show you how to do this 100% in Photoshop. You don't need to do any tracing in Illustrator or anything different. It's 100% Photoshop, and again, you can do so many cool things with this style, and it's a really good effect to know if you haven't come across it before. So just to show you what this is kind of a topography effect or geography effect. It's both sides of this canvas are set up in very similar ways. The process is very similar, and we're going to go over both. They're actually kind of quick. Once you get used to doing this, it's like super easy to put these to just start punching these out in Photoshop, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, very small tweaks will render totally different outcomes, and you can use them in so many different ways. And it comes in, like I said, it comes in really handy, and it's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun. So the left side you can see is more of a kind of a gritty, swirly effect. So I'm going to show you how to set that one up, and then the right side is more of kind of a traditional topography look where it looks like elevation. And it's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'll show you how to set this up. Go ahead and make a new document. So File, New. And for this one, let's go ahead and do something like on the larger side. We're going to do 3,000 pixels in width, 2,000 pixels in height, 72 for the resolution. My brain still wants to say DPI after years of print. And the color mode, make sure that's set to RGB. Again, every time we do these things, always make sure it's set to RGB. RGB will give you the most hue and saturation out of your colors. It won't change the color mode for print, which is CMYK. So keep that in RGB, and everything else should be good to go. So just press Create, and we have our new canvas. To get this effect, we're going to be using a couple different things. So let's go ahead and set up a fill layer, and we're just going to do a simple color fill layer. The cool thing about a color fill layer in Photoshop is that anytime you can double click it and you can change the color, and it's super easy. So let's go up to Layer and go to New Fill Layer, and we're going to do Solid Color. And this will be our backing color, right? And for this, let's go ahead and just use a middle of the road gray. All right. Once we start getting into this effect, you'll want to change it up, of course, to be whatever style you want it to be. But to be able to see what we're doing, let's just keep it at a gray. And so the hex value I have here is 79, 79, 79, and that's kind of might be kind of important to actually remember as we're going, because one of the effects that one of the processes we're gonna use. It's just good to know whatever hex value you got going on. So just press OK. Let's go and create a new layer. And for this one, we're going to recreate the left side, the red kind of camo-ish style outlines on the left. So let's go to Layer, New, go to New Layer, and I'll just call this one Gritty, and that's going to be, like I said, the left side, and hit OK. And then so many of these effects are set up by using clouds, Photoshop's filter of clouds. So let's go ahead and make sure that we have our foreground color set to white, all right? And make sure your background color is set to black, okay? If it's not that way, a quick way to do this is if one of my colors were off. When you look over on the color selection over here on the left, there's a little icon top left that says default foreground and background colors. You can just press that at any time, and that'll switch your colors back. All right, that'll switch them back to just black and white. So with our gritty layer selected, let's go to Filter, and we're going to go to Render, and we're going to go to Clouds. All right. let's zoom out a couple of times because we're going to scale this up. We want to be able to pull on the transform handles. Press Control T to easily get into transform, and then you want to maintain the proportions. So depending on your setup, I'm holding Shift and Alt so I can drag out from the center. You may not have to hold Shift depending on how you have your settings in Photoshop, but we want to scale it up to about 200%, something like that. So I'm just going to hit Enter, and then I'm going to zoom back in. All right, so we have our cloud set up. Let's go ahead and start distorting these a little bit and start to get that kind of wavy pattern so we can set up the base of what that geography effect will look like. So go ahead and go to Filter and go to Distort, and we're going to use this first filter called Zigzag. Zigzag you may not have come across before, but it has this really cool rippling effect. So I've already got some values in here. You want to make sure that the style is set to pond ripples, which is, well, exactly what it says. You can see the mesh on the right. It's going to give it kind of a rippling effect, but we're making it very subtle. All right, and then the amount I have at 62 and ridges I have at 3 for now. So again, changing these settings up will give you a totally different outcome, and it'll still be cool. But for this one, I'm just going to leave these leave Zigzag at these settings. I'm just going to hit OK, and you can see we slightly distorted the background a bit. Again, let's go to another distortion filter. So let's go to Filter, and we're going to go to Distort, and we're going to go to Twirl. All right, Twirl does exactly what it says it's going to do. It twirls it around, okay? But we're going to, again, make this kind of subtle. So right now, we're going to set the angle to about 45. And you can see on the right side, the preview, it's just slightly twisting it, just a little bit. We're not getting a twirl, we're getting a little bit of a twist. So hit OK. And you're going to see that it further like moves around. It's starting to get that kind of liquidy effect. You could use the liquify filter as well as a way to do this, but we've never really gotten into these filters, and I wanted an excuse to use them. So this is how I've always done it in the past. So with those completed, the last thing we want to do for the distortion is just go to Filter and go to Distort one more time, and we're going to go to Ripple. Okay, we're going to kind of pile onto these very subtle, like one subtle distortion effect on top of another. So for size, just keep it at medium, and I'll zoom out a little bit so we can see what's happening. For the amount, this one might be a little bit tough to see, but I'm going to boost it to about 175 and hit Enter. Okay, so it's kind of hard to tell, but it applied these little ripples here. And on second thought, I'm gonna Control Z out of there, and I'm gonna do a little bit less. That was a little more than I wanted. So let's go to Distort, Ripple, and I'm gonna turn this down to about 120 and hit OK. All right, so we've got kind of our base distortion happening, and now we want to clean it up so we can find the edges of this thing and start to do this terrain effect, right? So let's go to Filter and just go ahead and go to Sharpen, and let's sharpen this just a hair. We'll go to Unsharp Mask, and I've got the amount set to 50 and the radius at 1 and the threshold at 0. I'm just going to hit OK. This is just slightly sharpening the pixels up so we can find the edges easier. Now let's go ahead and boost the contrast real well. So let's go to let's go to Image, Adjustments, and we'll go to Levels. Now on Levels here, we're just going to slightly drag in the outer arrows here. We're going to drag them inward, and that's going to boost the contrast that we have happening here. So you want to drag in both sides, just further into the curve, not too far in, but you can see on the screen behind us, or on the preview, or on our document behind us, what's happening. So about there, just boost that contrast a bit and hit OK. Now this is this sets up the distortion, right? This sets up the basic kind of liquid look and the rough and grittiness. The next step is let's start pulling the edges out. So head over to Image, Adjustments, and then we want to go to Posterize. It's about the third little section down in Adjustments. It's right under Invert, so click that. And this is where we really start to make it starts to pull out the outlines of these shapes that we've created from the clouds and the distortion on top of it. So for levels here, it's really easy to get out of control quickly. So I would recommend not boosting levels too high. If you do a lot of levels, you're going to get more levels equals more lines that we're going to get in between each other. I mean, it could make a really cool effect if you're trying to get like a lot of lines in there. Boost them up. But again, you'll see if we drag this over too far, it could really start like not going the way we want it to, at least for this effect. So I'm going to come back down, and 5 is probably good for now, because you want to think that each one of these shapes of color is what is going to be, that's what's going to turn into our outlines, right? So let's keep it at 5 and hit OK. Now you want to go up to Filter, and you want to go to Stylize, and you want to go to Find Edges. And now you can see how this effect is starting to take shape. We have our lines now. Now let's go ahead and set them up so we can apply color to them. Okay, so we have that color fill layer, and that's where this starts to get real. That layer starts to get really important. We're going to play with the setting in here. If you double click the layer we called gritty, you're going to see that it opens up these styles, right? This layer style palette. Now, if it doesn't jump straight up to blending options, make sure blending options is selected, and then come down here and you're going to see this blend if box. This blend if box is a super important feature of Photoshop. It's going to come in handy in so many different effects and so many different things that you might want to work on. So if you've never played with this before, it's really cool. What we want to do is it says blend if, right? We want to make sure gray is selected, and you're telling the layer to blend if it's within this range somewhere, right? So we want the lines to stay, which is the dark colors, and we want to blend the bright areas, which in this case is the right side of the range, which is the bright white of the background. We want to make that transparent, so we want to blend it. We're gonna blend if it's this color. So if you start to pull that right slider inward right away, all the bright colors start to go away, right? The trick to this though is that it can create some pixels you don't want. So if I simply click OK and come in here and zoom in, you're seeing it still has some of these pixels just kind of floating around in here. We want those blended too, right? So how do you get that cleaner, right? So double click your layer again, gritty. Now a trick is on this arrow, hold Alt, okay, and you can split that arrow. And now you're blending a range of these pixels, and see you can kind of see how they're starting to disappear. Okay, so we really want to blend as much of it out as we can, because we just want the darker line to appear behind it. All right, so about there is pretty cool, and this is how, remember that hex value? So let's click OK, and now let's simply test it. Go to your ink dropper tool, and then just click the transparent area, and let's see what color it is. 79, 79, 79. That means all of that bright area is now completely transparent, and we are able to see right through it, right? So it's left the dark lines, and we have our transparent areas, and everything else is transparent. So let's just go ahead and get out of there. Now let's go ahead and zoom back out so we can see what we're looking at here. Now, if you were to try to fill this right now, it wouldn't work. What we need to do is we need to make that transparency permanent, okay? So a quick trick to do that is simply go to Layer, New Layer. So you want a layer right above the gritty layer. Now come over to your Layers palette and just hold Control to make sure that both are selected, okay? So we're simply taking an empty layer, and we're going to take our gritty layer, and the shortcut is just to merge those, Control E. So you'll notice, let me jump back, you'll notice that my gritty layer has this little icon to the right, and it's showing me that there's transparency happening here, there's blending happening here, right? So the minute that I have selected both of these and hit Control E, you see that icon go away. That means we just made it permanent, right? So now, this is where it gets pretty fun. Let's go ahead and double click our backing color, and let's bring it back down to a dark gray. Hit OK. Now let's go back to our layer, which we replaced the name. So I'm gonna rename it back to gritty because it took the name of the layer above it. And now let's go to apply a layer style or a layer effect. So down here towards the bottom of your layers palette, you have layer effects. And let's choose color overlay. Hey, look what we just did. All right, so color overlay allows us now to overlay color on all of those lines we just made, right? So I've already got red selected because I was playing around with it earlier. To hit OK, and bam, you've got that geography effect, right? Now this side, of course, is super gritty, and it has that real distorted look to it, which is a very cool effect on its own. I've used it so many times before, and it's a lot of fun, right? So that's the way to get that type of feel, and a lot of that was done by distortion, sharpening, adjusting levels, just keeping those clouds really, for lack of a better word, crispy, right? And then we found the edges of those clouds. All right, so let's go and let's do this again. I'm just going to hide our gritty layer. And I'm going to go to layer, new, layer. All right, we're going to call this, I don't know, we'll call this the smooth side. Hit OK. Same thing. Come down here and just press your default color button. Okay. Make sure you're going to render clouds in black and white again. Go to filter, just do it again. Render clouds. All right. Zoom out. Control T, scale it back up. Get it about 200%. Let's zoom back in. Now let's soften this up. Okay, we're going to soften this up to get smoother lines. So we're going to go to filter, we're going to go to blur, and we're going to go to Gaussian blur. All right. Now for here, we probably want to soften them up pretty good. I'm going to set the radius to about 18 pixels and click OK. All right. So now you can see everything's blurry, everything's definitely softened. Now we're not distorting this. You could distort it if you want, but let's just go ahead and jump a bunch of steps from the previous one, and we're just going to go to image, adjust, levels. Okay, same thing. Drag in those. I still don't know what these are called. These stops until we get both sides, pulled into the curves. We're boosting the contrast here. Click OK. And now again, let's go back to image, adjustments, and we'll go to posterize. And look at that. We're getting the same thing, but hey, it's smoother now, right? So this one, if we want to get more of a topography feel, let's go ahead and use a few more levels, all right? So maybe just a couple more. We'll boost this up to, let's go to 9. See what 9 looks like. Hit OK. All right. Now you guys remember the next step. Filter, stylize, find edges. It's already looking a lot smoother, right? All right. Same process. Double click our layer, blend if, hold Alt, split the arrows, and look at that. We've got our gray background coming through like we want. We don't want to split them too far. You'll notice that the lines get even thinner the more you split them. That's because we're losing more, we're blending more of the range of pixels, right? So to make it super clean, I'm going to show you kind of another trick here. I'm gonna make it really clean, right? Which is making those lines really thin. Okay, I'm gonna hit OK. Now again, layer, new, layer, right? I'm gonna go ahead and call this one smooth again because it's gonna, like, I forgot the last one. It's gonna take the layer that's above it when we merge these together. Hold Control, select both your layers, Control E, merge those together, and now we have our smoother kind of topography effect, right? Okay, here's where layer effects gets to be a lot of fun. You can adjust the width of this, and you can start to really play with colors on this. One thing you can do with layer effects, if you haven't played with this before, is you can rasterize them. Okay, So let's go ahead and let's say we want these lines thicker. Okay, we're going to go back down to our layer effects. Let's go to color overlay. Okay, and it's retaining the red color we had before. Let's go ahead and just make this white for now. Okay, and now let's make the thing thicker, right? We want thicker lines for this one. Let's go to stroke, pick the stroke color. We'll just make that white as well. You can see the lines are already getting thicker because I have some settings in here already. So for this, make sure the position is set to center. That's taking the center of the outline and it's building the stroke off of it. So depending on the setting you have here, it depends on where that outline grows from. So for now, I have the position set to center. Size, this is where you can make it. You can make it as thick as you want or as thin as you want. But it's going to be, it's going to have, it'll be consistent throughout the whole piece. So maybe you want to do a 2, right? 2 pixels in size larger. I think that looks pretty cool actually. So hit OK. Now the cool thing about this is, say, let's do another effect. For this one, I wanted to show you how to apply a gradient to it, which will come in handy. Simply right click on your smooth layer, and about, I don't know, 8 or 9 options down, you have rasterize layer style. Now what that's going to do is it's going to take all of our effects and it's just going to merge them into the layer, right? For these effects, it'll merge them all together. So just click rasterize layer style and let it think, and now you'll see all of our effects are gone, right? So now what we have is the whole thing is, our shape is the overlay and the stroke width we gave it, right? So we're able to make it wider. So now is where it gets pretty cool, because you can do another effect and you can apply a gradient to it. So let's go back down to layer effects and go to gradient overlay and just have some fun. Like you can make this, like let's do a green, right? Like a lime green might be kind of cool, right? Lime green, and then you can just totally change up, maybe it goes into like a darker lime green. And maybe the bottom, we're going to have it almost invert itself and just see what black looks like, right? So you can have some fun and see how it applies that whole. Now we have this, we're able to get this whole gradient just going over our effect. So just to look at it again side by side, I'm going to go ahead and just mask out one side. All right. Then we'll turn our gritty layer back on and we'll go to select, reselect, select inverse, and we'll mask out that side. And boom, you have 2 variations, very similar process to get this kind of outline, topography, geography effect. Again, this comes in super handy. It's great for backgrounds. You can overlay, product shots against it. You can overlay portraits against it. You can do, a lot of cool things with it. So I hope you found that at least interesting. Again, this whole process is something to just kind of, the approach to this comes in handy in a lot of different ways. If you're like scratching your head, you have this empty space and you want to fill it with something, just the base steps that we took of render clouds into distortion effects, into blur or sharpen, or anything to manipulate those base clouds, and then just remember posterize, fine edges, right? And that'll give you a bunch of cool shapes to work with to break up backgrounds and make some really cool stuff. So I hope you found that interesting. Yeah. All right, that does it for another episode. I will catch you next time, and we'll make something else cool. All right, later all. Also, if you like any of the files that we created or worked on for this tutorial effect, you can get those at my Patreon account. There's a link below. You can go over there if you feel like kicking down some support. All the files are there, and along with a lot of other goodies and behind-the-scenes stuff. And there's a free font up there now. But I'm going to be adding a bunch of files and assets and just anything that I think you guys might dig, and I'll be leaving them over there. All right, so all the PSD files that you saw that we created here today, the first one and the outcome that we had during the video process. That's there, and I'll thank you ahead of time if you choose to support that. So that's cool. All right, I will catch you later.